Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. Week 5 rankings, debate by position. You want a position? You hit the time codes, and you can jump directly there. You just want a list of the rankings? That's easy stuff. Down in the description, as well as is the best tournament on DraftKings, the rake-free Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League. $15 to play, 3 max entry, no rake. Get yourself in. There's 3,500 spots. It usually fills by Friday morning, so you might as well go reserve your spot right now. And if you want to make your own projections for the week and do all of your research, easy to do at runthesims.com. Runthesims.com/Mayo will get you 10% off any membership level. I recommend doing the weekly. You do the weekly, you like it, you roll it into the monthly. You like the monthly, you roll it into the annual membership. Good for 12 months, so beginning of October to beginning of October. You still get weeks 1 through 4 for next season as well, all with the discount code Mayo at runthesims.com. Jake Ciely from theathletic.com, back on the line, doing this again. If you had one guy to pick up this week off the waiver wire, why is it Mike Boone?
Because it's not.
It is.
I'm not going for Mike.
It is Mike Boone.
It is not Mike Boone. It is Tyler Algier. And I would go George Pickens. I would go, because people haven't listed and he's still sitting out there. I would go Michael Gallup in his use in his first game back. He's still sitting out there. People haven't listened. I would go Alec Pierce. I would go Brian Robinson. I would keep going because the Broncos went and snagged Latavius Murray. Not that I think Latavius Murray looked great last year. He looked fine. He looked better than Mark Ingram, but that's why, because Mike Boone's fumbling. They're frustrated with the Melvin Gordon fumbling. I don't know that they don't just bring in Latavius Murray to do a full-blown committee or you annoy this. So I am not going hard after. I would get Mike Boone, but he would be like 5th or 6th in my waivers.
I have him number 1 at running back. I have Algier at number 2. Like, it's a 4-week fix until he comes back to the back end of a committee once CPAT is back. At least there's a chance that it seems like they're pretty done. I mean, obviously, Javante's out for the year. That's why this becomes a more intriguing situation. Yeah, it might not be Mike Boone. It might be a lot of Melvin Gordon. It might be Lat Murray, like you said. I wouldn't blow my entire fab budget on him, but I do think that is the one situation that presents the most playing time, the most upside long-term for the year. Like Algier for the next 4 weeks, sure. You can have me on that one. Although Caleb Huntley is real quick, so you got to watch out for him coming out of the backfield, and Avery Williams or whoever the hell it is that the Falcons want to use.
Yeah.
But I think that Boone
safety.
Boone just could end up being the lead in this backfield, playing like 60% of the snaps, doing what Javonte Williams did. And I mean, obviously he's not as good, but if he gets the goal line carries because they're sick of Melvin Gordon's fumbles, you could luck yourself into a low-end number 2 for the rest of the year. That's why I like that one better.
I think there's a world where Algier is a low end 2 for the rest of the year, and that Cordell Patterson comes back to be the timeshare pass catching piece that was, I thought, originally planned when they took Algier. I also don't know that Melvin Gordon isn't just going to take all of the passing down works, because Mike Boone is he's not very good there. Maybe he improves a little bit, but it's a little late in the game to be improving at this point. And that's my biggest concern. I don't see where even Mike Boone being 60% is going to involve any of the passing game work. So we're just on different sides on this one. I have very little interest in Boone becoming top 20 permanently. And I think Algier could do it even after Cordell Patterson's back. So that's why.
I see zero chance of Algier being top 20 after CPAT returns. It's CPAT's job. He's good. He's 3rd in the league in rushing.
No, it's CPAT's timeshare job, or else they're going to get him killed again. I think they realize that at this point.
But if he's the high end of the timeshare, then you have the backup Atlanta running back.
I don't know that it's high. I don't know if it's the high end of the timeshare. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that you give Cordell Patterson 15 touches when he comes back again, because every time they do, he's banged up and hurt the next week. So why not do what is built here with Algier between the tackles, a very Tevin Coleman-like kind of running back than they had in past years? I know different regime, but I'm saying stylistically, you bring him in, complement, piece just like we're talking about with the Broncos, but I want the potential goal line rushes, unless they still give those to Patterson. I just don't know that it's going to happen with how many times he keeps getting hurt. So I'm not saying my way is definitively better than yours. I'm just going Algier because I get those 4 weeks where I know he's the lead, and then potentially still top 25 running back after that. I just don't think that Mike Boone has that. And maybe I'm completely wrong. I just don't see it from Mike Boone. The Latavius Murray, bringing him in and off the practice squad concerns me. And as does, like, what I'm going to double down on Mike Boone in the passing game. I don't think is a factor at all.
Well, I mean, it's not like Melvin Gordon is James White. He could just be on the field and end up soaking up receptions. Josh Jacobs sucks at receiving. Now, all of a sudden, they're using him out of the backfield as a pass catcher.
Yeah, but Mike Boone's not going to get 70% of the work.
Hey, if you get 60% of the work, then we're looking pretty good.
He's not getting 60% of the work. I will eat crow on that one.
Okay, well, I think that's the potential of what you can see. I don't see it with Algier. Like, he's just a jag, and he's getting thrown back on the heap once Cordero Patterson comes back. At least with Boone, you have that chance at the entire season if he can claim the job. He might be out of a job in a week and a half. That's definitely on the table as a possibility. I saw people talking about Brian Robinson as, like, the number one waiver pickup. Here's what I don't understand about that. Because everyone's convinced that he's the starting running back in Washington the moment he comes back. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but we've just seen a situation now. And I don't think Antonio Gibson is dead by any means. So he's still on the team. Like, he is currently a commando, and J.D. McKissick is still there. So all you're really doing is, let's say Antonio Gibson doesn't exist, and Brian Robinson just takes the Antonio Gibson role right now. I mean, he's just Antonio Gibson, which is like kind of okay. But since Antonio Gibson is still there, it's not like he's never going to see the field. So all you're really getting is a lesser version of what Antonio Gibson is right now.
Well, that's the more important part. I think if he's just Antonio Gibson, we saw Antonio Gibson last year, even before McKissick got hurt, that he was a top 20 running back. He was like 18, 19, 20, depending on what site you were playing on. So I think that's the appeal people are going for, where I completely agree with you, is that's not going to happen. The Gibson snap percentage has been concerning. That's what everybody keeps referencing, is that he went from 60 to 50 to 40, and now it's like 38 last week. But what I brought up is, while that is concerning, the passing down snap percentage has hovered around the mid-50s all 4 weeks. It's bounced a little bit because it's not going to be exactly the same every single week, but it's bounced around in the 50s. That hasn't gone down. It's just overall snap percentage has gone down, which brings us back to what you're saying. Brian Robinson comes in, and I do have Brian Robinson behind Algier and those wide receivers and everything like that, is because yeah, sure. You said, let's say there's a world where there's no Gibson. Let's just say there's a world where he definitively, because that's not even a guarantee, but he definitively comes back and is the lead. It's a committee now. It's not even a timeshare. And that's, I think, the most important part is you're making here is that Brian Robinson gets what? 14 touches. McKissick gets his 6, 7, 8. Gibson's still going to get 5, 6, 7, 8 himself. Like, I just don't know where the upside for Brian Robinson is unless Gibson gets hurt, who hasn't fumbled the first 4 weeks, has been used inside the red zone, has been used in the passing game. It's not like Gibson's done anything to deserve to lose the job in the first 4 weeks.
No, and the biggest problem that I would have, unless this somehow gets rectified, maybe it does, because I think Chase Young is coming back soon, like they're getting healthier on the defensive side of the ball, but Washington was able to come back in these games the first 2 weeks. They have not been able to do that the last 2 weeks. They get in this giant hole, and then all of a sudden, it's 60% of the snaps for J.D. McKissick. Like, that's still going to happen once Brian Robinson comes back if they don't solve these defensive woes. If they're way up, then yeah, you want to have a Washington running back. They love running inside the 5-yard line. Antonio Gibson right now through 4 weeks is still one of the top inside the 5-yard line touch leaders. Like, that's exactly what you want. Their first play every time they get near the goal line is handoff to Antonio Gibson. you take his name out, you put in Brian Robinson, that's exactly what you want to see. But if they can't not be down by 2 touchdowns, he's just not going to be on the field that much.
Well, and on top of that, it's not even Chase Young. You know what the problem is, as we continue to say, Pat? There's one thing. It's the offensive line, and you know what it is. Not any good. Because, you know, that's the one side of Antonio Gibson. He's not even averaging 4 yards per carry. I think he's RB 19, 20, or 21 right now, the same he was last year. He had double digits in the first 3 games. He had a single-digit performance, but almost got 10 last week in a half-point PPR. He's still doing Antonio Gibson things. So, yeah, you put Brian Robinson in that role, you have a fringe RB2, but the biggest problem is I don't care if the defense is better. I don't care if they could potentially grind out the clock, because they're not grinding out shit. So there you go. I just cursed on your show for you.
That's impressive stuff. I have some of the details on the running back usage inside the 5, inside of like end zone targets for receivers and running backs and tight ends, inside the 20 work. You can find all of that in the Mayo Media newsletter. I put it in there this week. There's a new one that comes out on Tuesday evening with secret content, more stats, completely free to subscribe to. You can get that down in the description right now. Just put in your email and boom. And don't think that I won't sell your stuff to a third-party provider. I won't, but, I could at some point. I need some bucks here when everything goes poorly, Jake.
You do? We'll start our own brand new show just every single day of the week, just bitching about stuff. How about that?
Just yelling back and forth with Pat and Jake.
Yes.
Let's talk about the running backs for week number 5. I don't have Jonathan Taylor in the rankings. I want to put that as a caveat. Right now, he's dealing with some sort of ankle injury, and if he was playing on Sunday, I would expect him to play, but this is a Thursday night game. I'm not sure where he's at. Fortunately, we will know by the time Thursday happens. This is on a Tuesday, so I will update the rankings. All the rankings down in the description right now. They get updated every single morning, and then 2 hours before game time on Thursday, on Sunday morning, super early, then Sunday morning again, and then I'm done. Then I don't care anymore. You've already set your teams for the week. I'm not updating them before the 4 o'clock games. I'll tell you that much. I'm like half in the bag prepping for my Sunday night show. We are Sunday Night Live, by the way, every 7:15 p.m. Eastern time. So here are the rankings. Saquon, back-to-back weeks at number 1. He should have had a huge game against the Bears, and did, real life-wise, just to get in the end zone. It happens. Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, the most volume, least efficient running back in football. Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Jamal Williams, still expecting no DeAndre Swift this week. Leonard Fournette and Josh Jacobs round out the top 10 that goes into Khalil Herbert, who I am once again expecting David Montgomery not to play. Obviously, he could play, then Herbert would not be ranked number 11. Swear to God. James Robinson, 12. Rashad Penny, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce, Jeff Wilson Jr., Miles Sanders, not expecting Boston Scott again, Najee Harris, and Breece Hall round out the top 20. I think we need to have a conversation about Christian McCaffrey, sir.
And what would that conversation be, sir?
Why is Baker so bad?
Man, I tweeted about that, I think either Sunday or Monday, or no, it was yesterday, because I was joking about like Allen Robinson missing and stuff like that. And I said, hey, look, I said at the beginning of the season, just like everybody on the planet, every fantasy show there was, it can't get any worse than Sam Darnold. Guess what? We were 100%, all of us. Find me a clip. Kudos to the person out there if there is somebody who said it could get worse. I want to know who that person is, and credit to that person. Show me the tape, because we didn't think it could be this bad. It is miserable. Put Sam Darnold back at quarterback. Too bad the problem is Sam Darnold is not even healthy. They can't even turn to him. So this is miserable. Baker, I would say, you know what? Okay, Christian McCaffrey kind of makes them spread the ball around a little bit more, but it's Baker Mayfield's just been trash. Robbie Anderson looked like he had some hope in week 1. That's been trash ever since. And so this offense has been trash, which hurts the running back. I mentioned this on All in Football, Pat, and I said it to the late Mike Tagliere, who brought this up in a column a couple of years ago, who said that it's rare, if ever, that a running back finishes top 10 on a bottom 5, bottom 10 offense. And that's what we're looking at right now. Christian McCaffrey's doing everything you possibly can, but this offense is god-awful, miserable. And, I mean, at 6, it's where you kind of have to rank them. And last week, he kind of got there just in the passing game alone. But that's because Christian McCaffrey's not number 1. That's the conversation we're having, is that we have to rank Christian McCaffrey in that Dalvin Cook range because of how bad the offense is.
It's funny because all the discussion at the beginning of the year coming into drafts, like, do you draft Taylor? Or it was like, you draft Jonathan Taylor number 1, you draft McCaffrey number 1. The answer was just Cooper Kupp, as it turned out, as many people did go to. It was just
draft, or
Saquon. No one was drafting Saquon at 1. But you were, listen, I think I had him at 7. You had him at 5. He is the number 1 per game running back. It's Saquon, Chubb, Eckler, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is god awful but scores a bunch of touchdowns. But
no, it's the inverse of last year.
But here is the thing of why I had McCaffrey at number 1 and why I'm not panicked. He's still the number 5 running back.
I know. That's what's so insane about it. Like, I think even before last week with all the receptions, he was still inside the RB1 territory, and that was my point. Like, as bad as it's been, I mean, we can go to other running backs. Like, as bad as Joe Mixon's been, he's still inside the top 20. I think even some top 15, depending on what site you're on. So it could still be, hey, it's not what you. It's perception and fantasy, and this is. I don't mean to like derail the conversation here, but just as a quick version, is like this is where you take opportunities in trades, because a lot of times perception's created by the opportunity cost you bought into at the draft. So if people aren't performing like top 5 talents or first, second round talents, but they're still 4th or 5th round talents, that's a buying opportunity because people are pissed off and ignore the fact that they have a window to get back to where they were, which is why we hammered everybody, yourself included, buy Austin Eckler last week and your window closed. This is the same situation. Go buy Christian McCaffrey, go buy Joe Mixon, and all the similar names like that.
Mixon, I think, is a little bit different because he is, as I mentioned, he's the leader in volume right now, but the efficiency is the worst of any running back. Because that revamped Bengals offensive line sucks. It's bad. Like, I'm looking at adjusted yards right now on the ground. So adjusted line yards for the year: New England's number 1, Vegas is number 2, Atlanta's number 3, Buffalo, Indy, the Chargers, Jacksonville, Miami, Cincinnati are your worst at adjusted O-line in terms of gaining yards for running backs. For just pure RB yards out of the backfield, it's Cincinnati by far the worst.
Yeah, but here's the one thing I will say. Offensive lines are volatile and in their own right, and sometimes it takes time to gel, and I'm not saying the Bengals. But week 4 against Miami, it did look better. What did Burrow get hit once or 1 sack in that game? And I'm not saying like take this all like, oh, it's going to be amazing. Like all of a sudden it's going to be top 10. I'm just saying it might have taken a little time to gel just to get to middle of the pack, which we'd be happy if the offensive line was middle of the pack, because that's still better than where they're to this point. And it's still better than when they were last year. And last year, even with a bottom, 6 or 7 offensive line last year, Joe Mixon was still number 3 or 4 in most leagues. So I still think what you said is the most important part. It's volume. That's not going to go away. We do expect better days for their offense, and that's why I'm buying Joe Mixon.
Looking at the entire top 20, do you have any nitpicks that you want to get through here of, hey, this guy should be 2 spots higher. This guy shouldn't even be inside the top 20. This guy should be in the top 20. That's what I want to hear about.
It's tough because we're kind of like settled down into this point of where we are, knowing what we know. I think that J.K. Dobbins was going to be in the conversation, but he's 21, which you haven't got to yet, to kind of spoil that for everybody. But I mean, really, to pick anybody out of the top 20, Jeff Wilson deserves to be here. Pierce Sanders has turned into a bell cow, interestingly enough. There's no way that another situation. I know he's facing Buffalo, but you're hoping that Kenny Pickett sparks that offense, which that offensive line is pretty terrible too. But Najee Harris is the volume situation. I can't get away from that.
It is, but here's the problem, and because I initially had him ranked at number 11, I think, because that's usually right around where this is not the same version of Najee that we saw last year, because he's not just catching 7 dump offs a game, which was really helping. Right. It's that Kenny Pickett stealing his touchdowns. That's not good. Where he's turning into Devin Singletary.
I don't think that's going to be that bad. I think that's
that wasn't a possibility before. Now it is a possibility.
Oh, I don't think it's going to be that high, but I don't think we're talking about Trey Lance before he got hurt or Jalen Hurts or anything like that kind of a level. This is like Daniel Jones kind of a level.
I mean, Daniel Jones stole theoretically 2 from Barkley last week.
Theoretically, but again, it's 1 week out of he stole maybe 1 in 3 games before that, if even that. So that's what I'm saying. It's like it's Daniel Jones
but it's a dock anyway. Like, this is now a real possibility that Kenny Pickett could steal a rushing, like just not even steal a touchdown. He might steal 2 opportunities inside the 5 per game. You only get so many throughout the course of a game that if I now have to factor that in, and like you can't do anything because your offensive line and offense sucks anyway, like that's a big tick down on the list. Like, you're trustworthy as a running back too at this point. Maybe I'm wrong. He proves he's the running back one. He's going to score 3 touchdowns from the 1-yard line this week. But I have my worries here.
No, and I said you're right to have him in this range, in this conversation. What I was saying is I wouldn't overreact, because at least for me, it sounded like you were making it worse than what you're saying. So I understand. This is why we talked through this. I just was saying, yeah, it's a thing. It's just not a thing where I'm worried about. I wouldn't even say Josh Allen level thing. I'd go back to Daniel Jones, which is a little bit of a tick, but I wouldn't say go crazy worrying about it.
No, but the other side of the Barkley thing of why he's still at 1, I'm going to hurt Harris with this, because I already had that included with Saquon coming in. I know Daniel Jones runs the ball, and it doesn't really, Barkley can score from 70 yards away. It doesn't seem like Najee Harris is a real, one guy missed, see ya. He's not that guy.
No, but Kenny Pickett you could actually get this offset and get possibly Najee Harris back into the RB1 territory, even top 10, because Pickett is better for the offense. And I'm not even a Pickett guy. It's definitely better than Trubisky. Honestly, watching that game, Pat, did it not feel like the other 52 Steelers on that team were like, oh my God, thank you. We're away. Like the energy level just went up as soon as Pickett stepped on the field.
Yeah, I would completely agree. Do I have Dameon Pierce too low, do you think? As crazy as that sounds. I have him at number 16.
No,
Should he be like number 9?
No, because the fact is he did get a lot of receptions in that game, but at the same time, they are still using snap-wise, they're still using Burkhead on 3rd and longs and some passing down opportunities. I think that's a fair spot for him. I don't think I could put him over anybody inside at least your top 11. So if I was doing tiers in your ranks, I would cut off at Khalil Herbert and then Robinson down to probably Najee Harris or Breece Hall. Like that's a pretty big group of names where, if Breece Hall finishes 12 and Dameon Pierce finishes 20, like wouldn't it shock me? Dameon Pierce finishes 12 and, you move Alvin Kamara down to 20. Like I think it's a pretty big group where all those guys are kind of in that RB2, but granted we're going all the way down to 20 in your ranks, but they all feel like high-end RB2s.
I would almost say that Herbert through, and even going into it a little bit, Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So the 21 to 30 range, you have like Dobbins, Edwards-Helaire, Antonio Gibson, A.J. Dillon, Devin Singletary. Maybe that's too low on Singletary, but we'll see. Kareem Hunt, James Conner, Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard, Naheem Hines. Again, no Jonathan Taylor in these rankings at these moments. Like everyone down to, hell, Hines, like 11 through 30 seems super interchangeable this week. Like, yeah, the lower end is the lower end because I don't think they quite have the exact same upside. Like, what is Zeke's upside against the Rams, who still possess like the 4th best rush defense? Like, he gets 33 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown.
I mean, possibly, but to go back to what you said, Singletary feels like Edwards-Helaire in their same roles, just Edwards-Helaire, as you mentioned. Actually, Singletary's been better. Edwards-Helaire is just getting more touchdowns. Like inherently, if I'm not trying to bank on a touchdown, and Singletary's plays for the Bills, it's just as you mentioned before, Josh Allen, and that's kind of where you're going with the factor of Najee Harris. Josh Allen could steal that potential touchdown from Singletary. I think Edwards-Helaire and Singletary in the same conversation. I'd probably go Singletary than Edwards-Helaire, but the one that I would move up into this group, we haven't even gotten to because you have them all the way down to 39. Is Dameon Harris, because they are still 50-50 this backfield. Dameon Harris still gets what we're talking about, all those goal line and red zone opportunities. And look at the matchup this week. It is another matchup just like last week where Dameon Harris had 80 yards and the touchdown, and the Patriots are sitting pretty at home against the Lions run defense. I would have Dameon Harris in the same conversation with like A.J. Dillon. They're probably going to end up with 13, 14, 15 carries, 70-ish yards, and a good chance for a touchdown.
Okay, I can be sold on that. It's just I've been coming more and more around on Ramondre just simply because he's playing more than Harris. Although when Harris plays, he gets the ball more than Ramondre does. But both those guys, I feel like, yes, you have the touchdown expectation for Dameon Harris, which is higher than Stevenson. But you also have the pass catching work, which Stevenson does get a bigger lean to. And I assume we're getting Zapp as our quarterback again, right?
Billy Zappi? Yeah. It's very likely, and that's why I think we might just see a ton of both of them. And then, it's not even so much, the love of Harris. I just go for the splits and that opportunity at the goal line. So I think Stevenson, you could even make a case for Stevenson to be moved up a few spots. You have Hines at 30 because you don't have Jonathan Taylor, and I agree with you. I don't think Jonathan Taylor is playing on Thursday night with the extended layoff, even if he is okay. But if you want to put Stevenson over Mostert, despite him leading that backfield, that's a weird one too. He's leading the backfield, but when it comes to red zone, actually the green zone time, it's like all of a sudden like, hey, let's either throw it or even give it to Chase Edmonds, which I'd rather just go for Stevenson's touches over Mostert never getting that opportunity. Like, some, but you know what I'm saying, tongue in cheek, never gets that opportunity. Yeah, so I took your advice. I moved Harris up to number 26, one spot behind AJ Hotfire Dylon. Singletary up to 22, one spot above Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So it gives us to like that 33-40 range, low end twos, flex plays. Maybe you need someone because guys got hurt. I go now Naheem Hines at number 31, Mostert, Boone, Algier, Stevenson, Edmonds, Carter, Melvin Gordon, Cam Akers, Kenneth Gainwell. And again, the Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell rankings are weirdly predicated on Boston Scott not playing. Yeah, the Kenneth Gainwell just actually lucked into a touchdown last week too. That's one to go back to like Cam Akers. I missed on Cam Akers. Should have never taken him in the third, fourth, fifth round, whenever you took him.
True.
Kenneth Gainwell. I thought Kenneth Gainwell would have Tony Pollard, the James White when he was healthy, that kind of value where Raheem Hines, J.D. McKissick, those kind of RB3s with some upside for a lot more if they score, but likely you're going to get that nice floor. I go back to what I said about Miles Sanders. The Eagles, for years before, when everybody's like, oh, Doug Peterson never uses a bell cow, and Doug Peterson kind of leaned on Miles Sanders a lot that one year. But this was even in this regime, and you saw the Boston Scott was the lead when Sanders went down, and Gainwell just kept that role. But Gainwell was getting those touches no matter what every single week, and this year, out the window. So I don't think you can even put Gainwell much higher with no Boston Scott, which is how you have it.
Yeah, if Boston Scott came back, I'd actually drop him back down on this list. It feels like he's getting on the field a little bit more in the red zone just because Boston Scott isn't there. Same as Sanders. Like, they're both seeing increase. It's like, hey, we're inside the 20-yard line. Let's bring in Boston Scott. It's like, what are we doing here? What's going on? So here's just as an update per DVOA, the 5 worst rush defenses in football through 3 weeks. The Lions, Patriots, Browns, Texans, and Packers are the bottom 5. And the best run defenses, Niners, Colts, Rams, Dolphins, and Chiefs. Washington, weirdly, up there as well, which I would not have expected. But why run on Washington when you can pass all over them, right?
That's 100%. I mean, you can do whatever you want with Washington right now, honestly.
What do you do with Alvin Kamara this week? I assume he's playing.
Start him if he's you start him if he's out there. Hey, the problem is what if he's not? And Mark Ingram, who we're set for, especially with this matchup, this is going to be a 2-touchdown Mark Ingram week on 30 yards. But if Alvin Kamara is out there, you have to play him. But I think he's in that conversation with like Najee Harris now. It's almost kind of like we know what the upside is, but we also understand that this offense has been disjointed, whether it's Winston or Andy Dalton now at quarterback. And that's the thing is I don't really change my opinion of Kamara, whether it's Winston or Dalton. Like Winston's been more reckless. Dalton's going to be what Dalton is, and we know who he is, and we just saw what he is. I don't think it affects Kamara. It's just the usage of him is going to be the interesting part. And he's the lead. Saints got Seattle at home. That's just a positive too. So I think you have to kind of keep him right around where you have him at 14.
I would think. I mean, I don't know the status of Michael Thomas as of yet. So if he comes back, maybe it's not the receiving option that they need. But if it is Andy Dalton, I know it didn't really come through last week, but obviously Kamara wasn't there, who we know is very good in the receiving game. That Ingram ended up with 3 targets and Latavius ended up with 1. We know that Jameis doesn't really throw to running backs. Maybe Dalton would throw to Kamara. That's the only thing. But I mean, I don't think you can bank on that. It's not factored into my ranking. But if there was upside there, that's probably where it comes from.
I think I would need a second tick. I think I would need a less than 100% Landry too, which we might get, just because Landry and Olave, if Andy Dalton do absorb enough, that I don't know if he'll turn to Kamara that much. It also comes down to the use, because if you use Kamara more in the wheels and arrow route and like get him out there and that type of usage, but even the usage of him in the passing game, you need kind of that upside where he's getting to the second level in some of his routes versus just dump offs too. So that's what I'm talking about. The Saints offense being disjointed. It just doesn't seem like they really even, I don't even care who the quarterback is. It just doesn't even seem like they know what they want to do. I mean, you have out there with this freaking Taysom Hill nonsense again, another week, which, hey, that was a nice flyer. I had like a RB or tight end 20 or 21 that past week. But that's the thing is like he's being used in what we would want Alvin Kamara to be used. So that's what I'm saying. The Saints offense just feels confused, honestly.
Wide receiver rankings 1 through 20 for week 5. Got a bit of a shakeup here. I feel like, at least in my mind, when I was doing them, I was like, no, I would play this guy over this guy. Here we go. Let's have a brand new set of wide receiver rankings. Cooper Kupp is number 1 because he is. He's best player in fantasy. Jamar Chase, Stefon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Tyreek, Mike Evans, Christian Kirk at 8, Sutton at 9, A.J. Brown at 10, Waddle, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, Debo Samuel at 14, CD Lamb at 15. We got a bunch of bad matchups here for some of like the higher end guys. You got CD with a bad matchup, Amari Cooper, who's 16 with a bad matchup, Marquise Brown. It's not a great matchup by any stretch of the imagination against Philly, but they just keep throwing him the ball, so here we go. Michael Pittman, bad matchup, and I don't know if anyone has found him. I mean, he disappeared at halftime on Sunday and hasn't been seen since. Maybe he'll make a return on Thursday night, and then Patrick Surtain's waiting for him, so that's not great, but he should still be the volume monster here. Number 18, Chris Godwin. Number 19, I have Keenan Allen in the rankings, but currently I have Mike Williams at number 20 against the Cleveland Browns. For reference, I have Keenan Allen at number 26. Just in this matchup in particular, coming off the injury, I would still start. Not that people have like the decision between Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. That'd be really weird if that was your fantasy team, but I would start Williams I would start Williams over Keenan Allen this week.
Yeah, I think you're depending on when you drafted and how that fell, you might have the decision. But yeah, that's the Surtain thing. Yeah, does bring in a mild concern. But and I'm not coming for you because I was on the same thing. I actually sat there and told our friend Joe Holka to smash the under on DK Metcalf, and then for whatever reason, he just ran right past our boy Akuda on that one play, and that he went on the over on that one play. I was like, yay, that was great. So at least that bet was out the window real early. But so I bring that up to say, you and I talk about it. We talked about it last week. We spent a whole 5 minutes on it. Is cornerback matchups are concerning, but concerning to a degree. They should be more what you're doing with your ranks. You're kind of like breaking ties and moving people around versus saying just don't play this guy at all. Like you said, Surtain's still concerning, but you're still playing him in the matchup. So I don't even really have a problem with that. I'm going down all the way to 30, and I don't really have a problem with any of your ranks so far. Like nothing stands out where I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe you have blank here. The only one that kind of feels a little high is the Devonta Smith situation, but only because I brought him up 2 weeks ago to say that and he did hit 2 weeks ago, but it's the same Deshaun Jackson, Marquise Brown, all those types where it's like, hey, 1 week, it's Mike Williams is in that same conversation. You're going to get 2. And then you're going to get 25. So is that what you're just kind of playing like last week? This is now the good week because last week was the week?
No, it's just his upside is actually so high in these circumstances. And he left the field for a bit last week, had to go to the tent. He got banged up halfway through that game. And it's funny because people have real A.J. Brown is so much better. Yeah, he might actually be way better. But it's not like A.J. Brown lit the world on fire last week. What was he, 5 for 95? Great. Just sometimes you get into these situations where the gap between two guys just isn't as large as you think. And I think that almost every other week, Smith could outscore A.J. Brown by a pretty substantial margin, too. And some weeks that Smith is absolutely going to just get annihilated by A.J. Brown. I would say that Brown is probably safer, more consistent, but I still am enamored with that upside with Devonta Smith.
And he's definitively the better talent, but to your entire point here, week 1 was the only week that A.J. Brown finished inside the top 10.
Really?
So, that's just, yeah.
Interesting.
For wide receiver.
Do you think number 8 is a bit ambitious for Christian Kirk?
No, it's really not. A lot of it had to do with the weather. That's a matchup situation that we would have been concerned about last week, even without the weather, because of Slay, and Bradbury. You even joke, good job, Giants, letting him walk because of your dumb contract situations. But looking at that, it was a concerning matchup, and then you had the weather on top of it. Saw 4 fumbles by Trevor Lawrence in that game, which, God forbid, if your league penalizes fumbles tough, whoo, I don't know if that even got you 5 points last week, that being Trevor Lawrence. But Christian Kirk is just the volume king up there with Cooper Kupp. He's just a little bit lesser version of, he's a much lesser version as a talent, and he's in a little bit less of a situation, consistently seeing 13, 14 targets every single week. But yeah, 8 does not feel too aggressive at this point.
Chris Godwin at 19. I saw what I wanted to see. I saw him crumble in a heap. I was like, oh, here we go again. No, he's fine. So just Chris Godwin, he's back.
Yeah, when he left the field and he's like, I'm like, oh my God, did he just aggravate the injury again? No, but yeah, Chris Godwin, you could even argue he should be a little higher than that because in the past years, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin just both fringe wide receiver 1s, and one finishes inside the top 5, one finishes at 15, and then they alternate the next week. So you might get me. Let's see, Arizona against Philly. I think I would go Chris Godwin over Marquise Brown by a hair, but Marquise Brown's volume is offsetting that. Although Rondell Moore came back and immediately stepped past the human Dortch.
Yeah, that wasn't
He's not even a factor anymore. No. Actually, you know what? If I was doing your rankings, And I know it's like I made the excuse. I said I would not worry about Amari Cooper. This is what you have to deal with Jacoby Brissett's a quarterback. We did this in week 1, and we just did it again in week 4. But for me, I would go Godwin. No, I would go Brown. I would go Brown, Godwin, then Cooper. I would put Cooper behind Godwin.
Brown.
But I mean, we're nitpicking top 20. You're still starting them.
All right, I can do that. Brown, Godwin, Cooper, 16, 17, 18. That bumps Michael Pittman to number 20. To number 19. Mike Williams, number 20. 21 through 40, we're going to be looking at DK at 21, Olave at 22. That is with Michael Thomas in the rankings. Tyler Lockett, Alan Lazard, Drake London, Keenan Allen, Romeo Doubs, Deontay Johnson, Brendan Ayuk, Adam Thielen. That's the top 30. 31 is Brendan Cooks. Do not love this matchup for Brendan Cooks at all, but maybe he's matchup agnostic at this point. But number 31, he's still a start.
He hasn't been as much this year.
I mean, he was good last week, actually.
I know, yeah, but the week before that, it's been hit or miss. Like, Davis Mills is not exactly doing as good as he was last year with Brandon Cooks.
Exactly. So Rashad Bateman, Curtis Samuel, that's with no Jahan Dotson. I finally bit the bullet and just said, you know what, screw Terry McLaurin. You were right. Curtis Samuel is the guy that you want to play if you're going to play one. Pickens at 34. Josh Reynolds. That's assuming there's no Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do have DJ Chark in the rankings, I believe, somewhere. Let's see here. Do I? Yeah, I have him at number 60. We'll see how he is coming off that foot injury. It's sort of like a hedge. If he's deemed completely healthy, practice is full, I'll move him up in the rankings. Gabe Davis at 36. He's still banged up. Michael Thomas may or may not play. Hunter Renfrow may or may not play. Garrett Wilson, Michael Gallup to finish it out. I think that Jacoby Myers comes back next week. I have him at 41. Rondell Moore, then Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy, and then there's Terry McLaurin all the way down at 45. Is this the ultimate time to buy him, or you just don't care anymore?
No, I do care. And that's why I said no. I was just laughing as you said that because I tweeted this out yesterday because of the Dotson thing. If Dotson is out, I said this could be it's officially 1 to 2 weeks. I know they said could be 1 to 2 weeks, but is it officially 1 to 2 weeks?
Oh, well, whatever. When they said it could be 1 to 2 weeks, I just assumed he wasn't playing this week.
I don't know. We've seen stranger things before. Let's just say. So what I tweeted out is I said it could be a significant loss and upgrade for McLaurin because here's why. Dotson, 4 end zone targets, 4 end zone touchdown catches. Nobody else on the team even has an end zone touchdown catch. The only person with 2 end zone targets is Terry McLaurin. And that's where I bring this up. I'm not saying it's all of a sudden going to be, yay, the world's on fire because it's still Carson Wentz. But if somebody's going to benefit, similar to my argument for Alan Lazard this year of being on with him and how much Aaron Rodgers looked his way, I think you're going to see Wentz, who was already looking McLaurin's way the second most, but still targeting the living hell of Jahan Dotson, is that McLaurin's boost could come here. He hasn't scored a touchdown. He's got those miserable yards. Last week, he had decent yards in 2 games so far. Like, I think this could be a boost to McLaurin. I would put McLaurin kind of in that. If you're going to risk the fact that Hunter Renfrow is going to do much in his first game back, or Garrett Wilson with all of a sudden spreading around and sending it Corey Davis's way the most in his first start back with Zach Wilson, I think he would fall more into that range for me.
All right, so just bump him up like 5 spots or so is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I play him over Michael Gallup.
All right, so you'd still play Garrett Wilson over him?
I would, but wait, who the Jets got? Who the Jets had? Why do I'm blanking on who the Jets had this week? Miami.
Jets are playing Miami, yeah.
Yeah, I would just play for that shootout instead.
All right, yeah, I'll put McLaurin at number 40 then. And then you got like your Jerry Jeudy's, Russell Gage's. Robert Woods could be into an intriguing situation here because is Traylon Burks like the new Laviska Shenault that people on the internet just think he's awesome, but he fucking sucks?
What are you talking about? I sat here with you during the draft time and I said, let's talk about Traylon Burks for 2023. I said those very words. I like the talent, but he needs, similar to some quarterbacks, he needs time to develop. He was a raw wide receiver. That being said, if you told me like talent versus talent, I'd take Burks at this point of their career over Woods. And there were signs of Burks through the first 4 weeks, but now he's hurt. And Robert Woods was already signs of being the one to be a little bit more productive. So, yeah, it could be, but it's still the Titans offense. It's still, we know this, it still runs through Derrick Henry. And at this point of Robert Woods' career, if Phillips can get back on the field, if it's Westbrook-Akina, whatever it might be, it's still, I mean, it's essentially the wide receiver version is like the lesser version of the Ravens. And we see how much Rashad Bateman's struggling to put the consistency together.
Well, Rashad Bateman may not play this week. He's dealing with a foot injury.
Right.
If he sits,
I don't care. I don't want any wide receiver. No, don't want any wide receiver. I'm not going to chase that one.
There is no possible way you would ever start Duvernay this week.
I mean, I would have to be in a deep like. So okay, let me run through your rankings and say if there is no Bateman, I think you would get me in the conversation of Duvernay. I mean, I don't even know where you move him up from 51. I'd still play Juju.
I would.
And maybe DJ Moore at 48.
I'd play Duvernay. I'd move Duvernay up past like where Josh Reynolds is at 35.
Nah, I wouldn't go that high.
The Bengals have no defense. Come on now.
I'd still play Michael Thomas. I'd still play Garrett Wilson, Gallup. I'd still play Jacoby for the floor. Jacoby would be the floor play if you want to make that break there. I'd still play Terry. But that's because I'm moving Terry up. So it comes down. Maybe you can get him to the 40s. If you put him around Elijah Moore, I'd be okay with that.
All right. Anyone else? Any other deeper receiver that you do want to talk about, or do we move on?
Allen Robinson. No, I'm just kidding. Alec Pierce should be higher. Legitimately, no jokes. Alec Pierce should be higher.
All right, you can guess rank him. Where do you want Alec Pierce? I mean, if this was the Rams' offense, he'd be great. They only throw to white dudes now. Just Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. That's it. That's the entire offense.
So he'd be higher in my rankings because of how mine are going to fall, and there's a few discrepancies. There's a few differences in your 40s and 50s than I would have him. I would probably have Alec Pierce right around. I'd play Alec Pierce over DJ Moore at this point. But that being said, you have a few guys.
Come on.
How we just sat here and talked about how do you play DJ Moore at this point?
I mean, what's the difference between everybody? I have him at number 48. Like, you really want to play Alec Pierce, who might be in the only offense that's worse than Carolina's? Like, the only people who score touchdowns on the Colts,
it's better.
You need to be at least 6'7" to score touchdowns on the Colts. That's the new rule.
No, Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman are the 1-2. I am playing Alec Pierce over DJ Moore, and that's because I'm not playing DJ Moore.
All right, I'll put him behind Zay Jones. I'll put him at 54. I'm not Alec.
I mean, that's what I was going to say. That's before you jumped in and your flabbergastedness is, I was going to say, I would play Alec Pierce over DJ Moore, but I would play Zay Jones over him. That's actually legitimately the name I was going to bring up.
Would you play Agnew if Zay Jones sits again?
Spiro Agnew?
Spiro.
You didn't even say it. No, because he's basically, I think part of that was weather too, because he plays the short game, and that's what benefited in that one. I'm not excited about Marvin Jones at all, but part of that was predicated on the weather and not being able to throw the ball downfield.
Quarterback rankings for week number 5. Lamar Jackson, number 1. Jalen Hurts, number 2. Josh Allen, number 3. Mahomes, Burrow, Brady, Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers. It's pretty like milquetoast, uninspiring top 10, but just the way that I see it this week. Now we get to have some fun here. Kirk Cousins, number 11. Wentzylvania, number 12. I actually picked up Wentz in my main league to stream this week. I think he's going to have a nice week. Geno at 13, even against the Saints. Derek Carr, the goof. I just bet the goof on a site that's open 365 days a year. He is currently 60-1 to lead the NFL in passing yards. He's third right now, and he's 21st on the odds list. I thought that was insane. So $50 to win 3,000 if the goof can keep this up. Jared Goff, Stafford.
That is pretty insane.
Bridgewater, Wilson.
Who's in front of him? Behind Josh Allen. Who's the other one that's in front of him?
Right now?
Herbert.
Yeah. Herbert's number 1.
No, I would, with being not 100% in that game, I would have never guessed her. I would have thought Herbert would have been more like 5 or 6. Interesting.
Yeah, I think Matt Ryan's number 4, which is insanity. But here's a perfect example.
I just pulled it up. He is. Oh my god.
Yeah, because I looked at it.
Oh, by the way, for Jalen Hurts can't throw. Jalen Hurts is 5, by the way.
So here's the odds discrepancy. Maybe it's changed right now. So you go to like futures on Bet365 and you find passing yards total for the year. Matt Ryan is 12-1 for the most passing yards. Goff is 60-1 at this current moment, and Goff is ahead of him by a yard. And they don't play defense, so he's gonna be throwing.
He is gonna be throwing. That's.
I don't.
What's Tom Brady? What is he like? 3-1?
Oh yeah, all the good quarterbacks are like 2-1, 3-1, 5-1. Like, there's no value on them. Like, just looking down the list, like I could see that. Like, I could see the Lions going like 6-11, and Goff has like 5,200 yards passing or something.
I mean, Derek Carr had 4,800 and change last year.
Yeah, I don't love like just because of the volume that he's getting and then being forced to throw all the time. I do think he's sort of like a top 15 every week quarterback right now, but I really don't love this matchup against the Patriots. Not that I'm scared of the Pats pass defense. It's I like Goff a lot less when he plays outdoors than when he's playing inside the dome, and the stats back that up.
You know what's interesting? And then do you still like your? I thought he'd be higher. His pass attempts, he's only 11th.
I know.
In pass attempts.
They do run.
Kyler Murray is number 1.
Yeah, but come on, he's just running around in circles. He's like Nelson Muntz. He's
just
of
course he's not completing many. Carson Wentz is number 2, completing even fewer passes. But the problem with Kyler Murray too is he's not throwing it 5 yards downfield every single time.
So I have Goff at 15, Stafford, Bridgewater, Zach Wilson, Russell Wilson, Ryan Tannehill. And then we get into like Fields, Dalton, Mariota. Poor Mariota, man. I streamed him last week. Not a success. Jimmy Garoppolo and Bailey Zapp. Oh, I like this guy. He seems so terrible.
He does. How do you not have your rushing wonder? You have him all the way down at 29. You love some rushing Daniel Jones.
Well, he might not play. Like, he has this ankle. Like, the only reason he came back in the game last week is because Tyrod got concussed. Now they're going over to London. I don't think he's anywhere near 100%. And if it is the ankle, like, he didn't run at all as soon as he came back in the game.
It's on that same field, right?
Yeah.
It's that's the good field.
Yeah. But I just worry that if he has this ankle injury, we're not going to get 10 carries for 70 yards and potential touchdowns from him in the rushing game. And then we're just dealing with him in the passing game. Not so much at time, man.
No, it's not. Tyrod probably won't be cleared, will he? I guess we'll know, especially if because they fly out earlier earlier in the week. So
yeah, you can't fly when you got a concussion unless you're Tua. That means they have to send Tyrod over on like a cruise ship or something.
If they're Tua, fly hell, they just like bring him back in the same game as we saw. I'm trying to think, who did they bring in? Oh my God, they just brought in AJ McCarron. I was just pulling up to see who they brought in before this. They just brought in AJ McCarron today, like a few minutes ago, like legitimately while we're doing this. They were working out. They brought back the Jake Frominator, and they brought him back too. So I'm saying all this to say like you're not going to bench him, but I would have to move Barkley out of the number 1 spot if it's McCarron or Fromm.
I wouldn't. Who cares?
They can't. I do. I do the fact that
because Daniel Jones,
the Justin Fields factor.
I don't even think it is the Justin Fields factor. I mean, Daniel Jones isn't doing the only thing that Daniel Jones is doing to help Barkley is running and creating some running lanes for him. But he's stealing his touchdowns. It's not like anyone takes this passing game seriously whatsoever.
No, I care if Barkley only gets 13 touches,
but he won't get 13 touches. He'll get 30 if one of these jabronis starts.
I don't even think they'll have 30 snaps if one of them starts.
Come on.
That's my problem.
Come on.
Will say I'll put it here. Look, I'm the biggest Barkley fan that there is. Clearly by the fact of my draft rankings and how many leagues I have him on. But I will the jersey behind me that I'm pointing at. My dog's name Saquon Barkley. Well, not Saquon, but Barkley. I will bet you right now, Pat, if Daniel Jones is not the starting quarterback for the Giants, Barkley does not finish as a top 5 running back this week.
Yeah, but so much of that is dependent on touchdown equity. Bet me in touches. That's all I really care about. I'm trying to project volume here.
I'll take that bet. He won't be top 5 in touches if it's not Daniel Jones.
Deal. That is a bet I will take. I will bet he will. If it's not Daniel Jones, I still think that Barkley. In fact, I think his touches go up if Daniel Jones doesn't start.
Wow.
He could.
I think you're underestimating the terrible. Pretend it's Nathan Peterman. How about that?
I don't think that Daniel Jones is substantially better than Nathan Peterman. I don't disagree on that one. You know how much I don't like Daniel Jones. Then any of these losers isn't going to be substantially worse.
I don't think you understand how bad Fromm and McCarron are.
Listen, McCarron's fine. McCarron almost won a playoff
I'd put Baker at quarterback before those two jabronis.
I'd put Baker ahead of Daniel Jones still. I'd still rather have him more. So I guess it's just...
By the way, you have Mitch Trubisky in and not Kenny Pickett.
Oh, yeah, that's fun. Yeah, I'm not playing Kenny Pickett either.
I'd play him over your Zappy guy.
Do not play quarterbacks against the Bills. It is a real tough scene so far this year.
Yeah, but at least you might get a rushing touchdown with Kenny Pickett, as you mentioned.
I mean, I just don't know if they're going to get the ball inside the 20. It's a real problem.
Just God forbid you're starting any of these people down here. Just please don't.
The only way we're even talking about is that... It could be a 2 QB
I was going to say
super
flex.
No, 2 QB super flex.
2 QB super what is it, 6-team league?
Yeah, no, you got to make that decision. Do you go all out in the draft and get every quarterback available, or do you just kind of punt quarterback, get your 2, and then move
Your
on to
entire
other?
bench is just quarterbacks.
Essentially so. Tight end rankings. I mean, it really only depends on Kyle Pitts. He's like the only topic of discussion here. Where's the Kyle Pitts line in terms of who's better? Who do you play over Kyle Pitts, and who don't you play over Kyle Pitts? So I have Kelsey, Andrews, Ertz, Goddard, Waller, Kittle, Hawkinson, Firemouth, Higbee. I did these before the Monday night game. I'd probably dock Kittle down a bit. I think I have to move Higbee up because he gets like 20 targets a game. I'm going to put Higbee at number 5, Waller, Kittle, and I'll put Hawkinson above Kittle too. So I'll change those up. So it'll be Ertz 3, Goddard 4, Higbee 5, Waller 6, Hawkinson 7, Kittle, Freiermuth, Pitts at 10. Schultz should be fine. I know he had 0 points last week, but he actually ran an incredible amount of routes. Like, he was being targeted.
I know.
So maybe he's still like a bit banged up. They don't trust him as much. Hayden Hurst, Gerald Everett, Njoku, Tower Conklin, Bobby Tunyon, Big Bobby T, Logan Thomas, Taysom Hill, Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry. Like, it doesn't get good, put it that way. Like, there's the Kyle Pitts. The Kyle Pitts line of demarcation this week. There are 9 tight ends I would start over him.
I'd start Gerald Everett over him too.
No thanks.
Darnold Parnon is not a factor. Gerald Everett's not stopping at this point.
I don't like Gerald Everett. I'm just saying it. He's the new Jared Cook to me. Don't want to play him. You can play him all you want. You can rank him number 1 because apparently he's the best tight end on earth. No, thank you.
He's playing for the Chargers too. The Dalton Schultz one was frustrating. I had him at the top 10 tight end, and like you said, the routes and the opportunity was there is just 0. I mean, he only get targeted like 3 times in that game too. That was frustrating. Kittle, I think we'd be having a different conversation if he scored that touchdown. Like not you and I, but I think the fantasy world. I think the bigger concern is not Kit. What?
I think it's just that they ask him to block it. Like now that the offensive line is so banged up, he's blocking like 85% of the time because he's so damn good at it.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is I think he's in the same conversation as Waller's been a concern, which was what we talked about in the preseason, is that when you have and that's even without Renfrow out there, is that it's the trickle down effect of Waller not getting 20% of the volume. So I think Kittle and Waller in the similar. I'd still play Hawkinson over, even with Amon-Ra St. Brown back. I think I'd play Hawkinson over both of them just because he's, as you mentioned, not asked to block as much as Kittle is.
2 tight ends who should have better days ahead. This is from the thread that I put into the newsletter. Once again, you can sub in the description. You had Dalton Schultz, 0 catches on 3 targets, but played 90% of snaps, 76% of the routes per dropback. That was 9th among all tight ends. So he's not blocking out there. He's running routes. The other one was Eric Sobert. He only had 1 catch for 25 yards for Denver, but played 75% of the snaps and ran a route on 77% of dropbacks. That was 7th amongst all tight ends. I know you're not picking him up and playing him for like drafting showdown on Thursday evening. He's better than Big Alberto, put it that way.
Well, knew that, like, that was the biggest thing is like I'm this reason why I was shaking my head no. I don't know if I was on camera, but I was shaking my head no because it's the same reason I have 0 Albert O and wanted nothing to do with Albert O. I just don't want a tight end with Russell Wilson. It's always even the 3rd best option, unless you go back to Jimmy Graham when he was one of the top 2 options for that team, not with 2 great wide receivers at that point. So that was what the Doug Baldwin, and it was those 2 every single year. I don't want the 3rd option tight end. You can argue he's not even 3rd, he's 4th because of the backfield or / KJ Hamler. I just don't want a tight end. I don't want anybody. I don't want a Subbert. I don't know if they turn to Greg Dulcich, who I like a lot. I just don't want a tight end in Denver.
I have Sobert at 24 at tight end. So
I mean, you don't even have him inside your top 20.
No.
By the way, down there with Dawson Knox, talk about disappointing a tight end. Everybody's so focused on Kyle Pitts, they're not even talking about Dawson Knox not catching touchdowns this year.
No, because they have to pass to Paul, Terry Gilliam.
Oh, Reggie Gilliam.
Reggie Gilliam. That's the guy. That's who they throw to instead of Dawson Knox in the red zone now.
Well, don't forget about Chigazim.
Shakira.
Oh, God, what is it? No, it's Okonkwo.
The guy on Tennessee. I thought you meant the guy who stepped in for Crowder and McKenzie last week because Kumaro was out. It was like Shakira.
No,
slot receiver for the Bills.
Khalil Shakir. I like him a lot. I have a soft spot for him. I told about this on the Athletic podcast. I was talking to Jamie Eisenberg, and they brought him out during lunchtime of the combine to the podium, and nobody's there to talk to the guy. And he's sitting there at the podium by himself for 5 minutes because nobody's out there to talk to him because everybody's at lunch.
Poor guy plays in the NFL.
I felt bad for him.
Yeah, feel real bad.
I felt bad for him. That was like sucks to just sit there and be like, yeah, nobody wants to talk to me.
Defenses to close it out. I got Denver Thursday night at number 1. I mean, Matt Ryan actively tries to give the ball to the other team, so that's usually a good situation to be in. Bills, Packers, Jags, Niners are the top 5. Dolphins, Bucks, Cowboys, Vikings, Titans are the top 10. And then I had Minnesota. So who am I missing there? Denver, Buffalo, Green Bay, Jacksonville, Sanford. No, I had Green Bay in twice in my rankings. Thanks, editor, for doing nothing. Kansas City, number 11. The Rams, number 12. Chicago, number 13. Carolina, number 14. And then I stopped ranking defenses. That's it. One of those is available. You can go pick up.
Dude, Pat, you know what was surprising last week? We're talking about defenses. Like we're talking practice. Are we really talking about defenses? The number of people that got so enraged at Miami being my top string, just like you, and I had Miami, I think, like 7th or 8th at defense, and the people, thanks for the 0 for my defense. I'm like, dude, it's a flipping defense. I'm sorry that the Bengals offensive line finally showed up for the first time this year.
Yeah, I'm sorry you lost your $10 season-long league. It's going to break you.
On a defense. Getting a 0 instead of a 7.
If your team can't sustain a bad defensive performance, which has 0 consistency to begin with, you have a fucking shitty team. I hate to tell you. Like, be better. How about that?
Thank you.
Like, I played Houston last week. I streamed Houston. They were horrible. I still won. It was fine.
Yeah.
I cashed on DraftKings some big money with Houston as my defense last week. So you should be able to overcome it.
Hey, Pat, I got a robust 9 points from my Dallas streaming defense last week. I still lost by 30. There you go.
Yeah, be better. All right, ranks down in the description. Your ranks come out at midnight?
They do.
There you go. TheAthletic.com, at AllInKid on Twitter. Mine are down in the description. They get updated every single morning. Remember to smash the like, sub to the channel. I'll be back on Wednesday with the spread picks, best bets on Thursday, DraftKings on Friday, and then if you sub to Fantasy Football Picks and Bets, I'll have the rankings update and the injury report on Saturday morning. So please tune into that. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!